it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up. In May I read a total of 8 books, which I was really pleased with. I am really pleased with. So we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in May and what I thought of them. First up on audio, I listened to Down Under by Bryson. This was a reread for me. I'd read this in physical form a number of years ago now, and I remember really enjoying it. And I saw that my library service had this, and I jumped on the opportunity to listen to it. Bryson, I'm sure you're aware, is a very prolific travel writer. He's very witty in his style of writing and sort of gives you a very honest opinion of what places are like and, you know, what he's doing in them and things like that. So this is basically a sort of non-fiction book all about his travels around Australia. He visits lots of different parts of Australia and talks about sort of his experiences with them. There were lots of details in this book that I'd forgotten from the first time that I'd read it. But it was really interesting listening to it again and just sort of getting back to grips with all of those things that I really enjoyed listening to him talk about the first time around. And yeah, this book holds a bit of a special place in my heart because I have been to Australia a couple of times, and I love that country and would love to go back, and just hearing him talk about some of the places that I've been to is really special for me. So I think I ended up giving that book 4 stars. Next up on my Kindle, I read Sweet Wild of Mine by Laurel Kerr. This is the second book in the Where the Wild Hearts Are series. I got a copy of this from NetGalley, so thank you very much to NetGalley and the publishers for sending this to me. I read the first book last month and really enjoyed it. The second book I didn't like so much. So this is the story of June and Magnus. June runs a couple of businesses in the Sagebrush Flats area, including a cafe, and she has her own sort of like jam business, and she is looking after her grandma who is developing some sort of dementia. It's never kind of named properly what it is, but it's something kind of along those lines. Magnus comes to town. He is a travel memoir writer from Scotland, and he's sent to Sagebrush because his last couple of novels haven't done very well, and they want to sort of send him back to his roots in terms of like writing about wildlife and things like that. So they send him to the zoo to see whether they can sort of reignite his writing passion or whatever, and it's about the relationship between Jean and Magnus. There were a couple of reasons why I didn't like this as much as the first one. The first of those was that because Magnus was from Scotland, there was a lot of dialect that was used in, like Scottish dialects that was used during the book when he was sort of talking, when we were reading from his perspective. And obviously understand why that is, but I felt like it really took me out of the story. I felt like it was a little bit ridiculous at times. Especially, I can't remember the word that they used to refer to his willy, but it was something ridiculous, and every time he said it, it was just a little bit jarring, and I didn't really like that. I also felt like Laurel Kerr used a lot of similes in this book that were really quite cringeworthy, and that was really disappointing because I didn't really get that vibe at all from the first book. But this book, I kind of felt like there were a lot of moments where the writing wasn't as good as the first book. But I did really appreciate the commentary that was on there on sort of like looking after somebody with a dementia type condition. And I did appreciate Jean and Magnus's relationship in the end, and I ended up giving that one 3 stars. Next up, I read A Week to Be Wild by J.C. Harroway. This is one of the books in the Dare line that Mills and Boon do. So I'm sort of dipping in and out of lots of different sort of series that they have, or categories that they have, or subgenres, whatever, however you want to say it. So I've sort of read one of the Dare novels, and this is one of the most recent Dare novels. I think it was published, let me just have a little look. Yeah, in 2018. And this is a story about Libby and Alex, and Libby flies over to the US at the beginning of the book. She's been asked to talk at this event, this sort of business event, and then Alex approaches her because he wants her to do some of the publicity for his charity. And she owns that sort of business, and it's about the relationship between the two of them. This had a lot of sexy time in it, an awful lot. So that's obviously what the Dareline is about, but it did have a storyline running through it as well, which I did appreciate. It wasn't just about the sex. So, you know, Alex was dealing with some things from his past. You know, he set up the charity because his sister died, and, you know, it was to encourage families who were grieving and families with children who had sort of long-term disabilities or illnesses, to give them an opportunity to have a bit of a rest and a break from the sort of real world. And I really liked exploring that kind of thing. Yeah, so it did have a bit of a storyline to it, but it did have an awful lot of sex in it. I mean, and the sex wasn't too badly written. It wasn't badly written at all, really. It wasn't my favourite in terms of the way that kind of thing is portrayed. So I did quite enjoy it in the end, and I gave that one 3.5 stars. Next up, again from NetGalley, I read Summer Escape with the Tycoon by Donna Alward. And this is a contemporary romance novel. It's part of the romance line for Harlequin on Mills and Bean. Set in Canada, so it's about Molly and Eric. Yeah, Molly and Eric, who both end up on this adventure type holiday together, and it's about the relationship between the two of them. So Molly is a divorce lawyer, and she, you know, never does anything outside of her comfort zone and always does what people expect her to do. So she decides that she wants to sort of break free of that for a little while and go on this sort of like Canadian holiday. And while she's there, she meets Eric, who I can't remember why he's there now, but anyway, he's got away from his life. I think he runs this big corporate business, and it's about them on this holiday, and they do different things on this adventure holiday, like they go kayaking, and they camp out in the wilderness, and they do various different other things. And it was really the setting of this story that did it for me, in terms of, it was just so lovely reading something set in Canada for a start. You don't often find romance novels that are set in Canada, or sort of, I haven't read many novels at all that are set in Canada. And so I really liked that. And I also liked, I did like the relationship between Eric and Molly as well. I did think it was really sweet. All the sex in this was behind closed doors, so if that's something that you're more sort of interested in, then this might be the book for you. I did really enjoy it in the end, and I would definitely recommend it, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up on my quest to read every Sarah Morgan book that she has written, I read The Rebel Doctor's Bride. This is the 3rd book in the Glenmore Island Doctors series. And I'm terrible with remembering names. Yeah, this is about Connor and Flora. Connor is just coming back to the island after having been away for several years, and when he did live on the island, he was known as a sort of local mischief maker. He did a lot of things that really annoyed people. He got himself into trouble quite a lot. You know, he blew up the science lab in the local school and things like that. So he's coming back to do his cousin Logan a favour, in terms of they need a new doctor on the island. And, you know, he hasn't been back since his father died. So he goes back, and there he meets Flora, and Flora is the new sort of practice nurse. And she knew Connor as a child, but being the local bad boy, was only interested in sort of like the more popular girl, so never really, she thinks that he never really noticed her, and it's about the relationship between the two of them. As this series has gone on, I do feel like Sarah Morgan's writing got better, so that was really lovely to see. I did like the relationship between Connor and Flora, and I did like the exploration of some of the things in Connor's past. Again, we got to see some of the characters from earlier on in the series, which is something else that I really like in Sarah Morgan's books. So yeah, this one was much better than the first two in the series, and I think I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, I did, which is a little bit more than my rating for the other two. Then I read a book from the library that was a bind up of 3 books, and I think the title of the 3 books together was like the Power Greeks, or the Hot Power Greeks, or something kind of along those lines. One of the books in there was by Sarah Morgan, which is why I wanted to read it, but I read the other 2 as well. So the first of those was called The Greek's Forced Bride by Michelle Reid. I really didn't like this one. So this tells the story of Leo and Natasha, and at the beginning of the book Leo goes to his brother's office to confront him about the fact that some money has gone missing in the business, and he finds him having sex with somebody in his office at the same time as Natasha walks in, and Natasha is his brother's fiance, and so she sees him having sex with somebody else, and that somebody else turns out to be her sister. So Leo sort of takes her away from the situation, and then later on accuses her of being sort of in league with her fiance when it comes to like embezzling money from him, basically. So in order to fix that problem, he tells her that he wants her to come to Greece with him and basically be his live-in sort of like sex slave for three months. And it's just about the relationship between the two of them. I hated it. I thought it was like Leo was such an arrogant tosser, basically, and it was all just about power for him. He manhandled her so many times, but at the same time she just let him do it. And there was a scene in there that really felt like he forced himself on her, and I really didn't like that at all either. And I just felt like there was no basis for their relationship, and it was all a bit crap, really. So yeah, didn't like that one at all. I gave that one 2 stars. And the second book in the bind-up was Powerful Greek Unworldly Wife by Sarah Morgan. So this is the book that I wanted to read in the bind-up. And this was about Leonardo and Millie. And at the beginning of the book, the two of them, Millie shows up at his house. The two of them have been separated for a year, because a year ago Millie thinks that she saw her husband sleeping with her sister. In that year that's gone on, her sister has had a baby and then died. So basically she knows that he's got the baby, so she's come to basically take the baby away. And it's about them sort of rekindling their relationship again. Again, there were some moments in this where I kind of felt like Leandro, don't know how you pronounce that, was throwing his weight around a little bit, and I didn't really like that. But I thought their relationship was based on something a little bit more than the previous book that I'd read, so I liked that a little bit more, and I gave that one 3 stars. And then the last book in the bind-up was the Diakos baby scandal, and this one was about Kerry and Theo. And at the beginning of the book, Kerry overhears Theo having a conversation, like they're in a relationship, and she overhears Theo having a conversation with his brother about taking his brother's baby away from his wife. And so she's gone to tell him that she's pregnant, but then she goes and warns the wife that they're going to take the baby away, and she runs and they have some massive accident, and then Theo basically chucks her out. Doesn't realise that she's pregnant, and then a year later wants to see her again because he wants to buy some island, and the bloke that he's trying to buy the island off of remembers Kerry from when they were together, and so wants him to bring Kerry back to the island, so he forces her to come back to the island, doesn't know about the baby son that she's had, and then eventually finds out, blah blah blah. I didn't really like this one that much either. I felt like the romance between them was too rushed, even though that they'd been together before, I get that, but at the same time they seem to work out their problems really, really quickly, and they weren't even worked out, they weren't even really resolved in my opinion at all, so I didn't like that one that much either, and ended up giving that one 2.5 stars. Yeah, so they were all of the books that I read in May. A lot of books that I didn't actually really like that much, but ones that I had wanted to read nonetheless. So yeah, there was a lot of romance in there this month as well, which is fine. I do like that genre. I don't like some of the books that I've read in that genre this month, but I do like that genre generally. So I'm looking forward to reading more of that genre, hopefully with stuff that I actually like a little bit more this month, with the Summer Romance Book Bingo kicking off. So yeah, I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? And, you know, what did you read this month that you really enjoyed? Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.